I woke up from hip replacement surgery to an empty room and a text message that changed everything. Sorry, Mom. Emergency at work. Be back next week. Love you. 3 hours later, I saw their vacation photos on Instagram. My son Ryan and his wife laughing on a cruise ship deck. Champagne glasses raised to the sunset. I didn't cry. I didn't call. I just made one phone call to my lawyer, and by the end of the month, they would lost the house they thought they would inherit. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, if you are enjoying these real-life family drama stories, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. These stories help us all learn about family dynamics and how to protect ourselves. Now, let's get into what happened to me. My name is Debra Walsh, and at 64 years old, I thought I would figure out how families were supposed to work. I raised Ryan as a single mother after his father died in a construction accident when Ryan was only 7. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat: morning shift at the diner, afternoon cleaning offices, weekend bookkeeping for local businesses. Every penny went toward giving Ryan opportunities I never had. Private tutoring, when he struggled with math. Summer camp, when other kids went to the beach. College tuition paid in full so he could start his adult life debt-free. I never complained, never kept score, because that is what love looked like to me. You sacrifice, you provide, you show up, no questions asked. When Ryan married Paige 5 years ago, I welcomed her like the daughter I never had. When they struggled to afford their first house, I co-signed the mortgage without hesitation. When Paige's car broke down, I handed over my emergency fund for repairs. When they needed someone to watch their twin boys during work trips, I cleared my schedule and showed up with homemade cookies and endless patience. I thought that is what family meant. An unspoken understanding that we would be there for each other when it mattered most. I never imagined that understanding only flowed one direction. The hip pain started about 8 months ago, a dull ache that gradually turned into shooting agony every time I stood up. Years of working on my feet had finally caught up with me, and the x-rays showed bone-on-bone deterioration that made my doctor wince. Dr. Rodriguez was gentle but direct when he explained that hip replacement surgery wasn't optional anymore. It was necessary to prevent complete immobility and potentially life-threatening complications. You will need help for at least 6 weeks, he explained, his kind eyes serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. The first 2 weeks especially, you will need someone there around the clock. This isn't minor surgery, Debra. Recovery requires assistance with basic daily tasks, medication management, physical therapy, transportation, and monitoring for complications like blood clots or infection. I nodded, taking notes on a small pad, and said what felt natural to me. My son will help. We have always been there for each other. When I called Ryan that evening to explain the surgery timeline, his response was immediate and reassuring. Of course, Mom, don't even worry about it. Paige and I will figure out the logistics, but you know we will take care of you. That is what family does. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, the kind of bone-deep comfort that comes from knowing you are not facing something scary alone. I started preparing the guest room, washing extra linens, stocking the pantry with foods Ryan loved from childhood. I even bought Paige's favorite herbal tea and arranged to have cable installed in the guest room so they would be comfortable during the extended stay. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning in early March. 2 weeks before the procedure, Ryan called with what he described as a slight complication with their plans. His voice had that overly careful tone people use when they are delivering news they know you will not like. Mom, here is the thing, he started, and I already felt my stomach tightening. Paige's sister is getting married in the Bahamas, and it turns out the wedding got moved up to the weekend after your surgery. The whole family's expected to be there, and Jen's in the wedding party. We already paid for flights and the hotel, and you know how tight money's been lately with the boys' school expenses. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the calendar where I would marked my surgery date with a red circle and tried to process what he was telling me. Ryan, the doctor said, I will need around-the-clock help for the first 2 weeks. I cannot even put weight on the leg for 10 days. I know. And we feel terrible about the timing, he said quickly. But here is what we are thinking. What if we arrange for a home health aide? Insurance might cover some of it, and we could chip in for the rest. It would actually be better care than what we could provide anyway, since they are trained professionals. The way he said chip in made something cold settle in my chest, because Ryan hadn't contributed financially to anything family-related in years. Every emergency, every celebration, every unexpected expense had somehow become my responsibility to handle. But I swallowed my disappointment and tried to sound understanding. "Let me look into the home health option and see what insurance covers," I said. "I want you to be at the wedding. Family is important." "You are the best, Mom," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I will help you research the aid services this weekend when we come by." But that weekend came and went without a visit. When I called to follow up, Paige answered and explained they would decided to take the boys to Six Flags instead, since the weather was nice. "Ryan feels so guilty about the surgery timing," she said. "He just needed a little fun to take his mind off the stress." I hung up feeling hollow, but I pushed the feeling down and started researching home health services myself. The quotes I received ranged from $200 to $400 per Dalton Y for round-the-clock care, costs that would drain my savings account within a week. When I mentioned this to Ryan, he suggested maybe I could tough it out with just a few hours of help each day, since I would always been so independent and strong. That phrase, tough it out, stuck with me for days, as if recovering from major surgery while alone at 64 was simply a matter of willpower and determination. As if decades of being the reliable one, the strong one, the one who handled everything, meant I wasn't allowed to need help when my body was literally cut open and reconstructed. The night before surgery, I sat in my living room looking at the stack of medical instruction sheets, the prescription bottles already lined up on the counter, the Walker rental agreement, and felt a loneliness so profound it took my breath away. This was supposed to be when family rallied around you, when all those years of sacrifice and support were reciprocated naturally, automatically. Instead, I was facing the most vulnerable period of my adult life completely alone, because a destination wedding trumped their mother's surgical recovery. I called Ryan one more time, not to guilt him, but because some desperate part of me hoped he might have reconsidered, might have found a way to balance both obligations. When he answered, I could hear laughter and music in the background. They were at some kind of party or gathering. "Mom, what is up?" he said, and I could tell he was walking away from the noise. "I just wanted to confirm the plan for tomorrow," I said carefully. "Since you will be leaving for the Bahamas on Friday, right? About that," he said, and something in his tone made my stomach drop. "We actually decided to fly out tomorrow night instead of Friday morning. Paige found a deal on an earlier flight, and it gives us an extra day at the resort. But don't worry, I will stop by the hospital Friday morning before you are discharged to make sure you get home." Okay, I sat there in silence for so long that he said, "Mom? You still there?" "Yes," I managed. "I am here. The aid service will start Saturday morning, right? So you will just have one night on your own, and you will probably sleep through most of it anyway, with the pain medication." One night on your own, as if the first night after major surgery was like staying in a hotel, a minor inconvenience rather than a critical recovery period when complications were most likely to occur. As if the possibility of falling, having an adverse medication reaction, or developing blood clots was just something I could tough out until professional help arrived. "Okay," I said, because what choice did I have? "Have a good trip." "Thanks, Mom. You are going to do great. You are the strongest person I know." I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time, that phrase echoing in my head, the strongest person I know. It was supposed to be a compliment, but it felt like a prison sentence, a lifetime designation that meant I would always be expected to handle everything alone while everyone else got to be weak, to need help, to be taken care of. The morning of surgery arrived gray and cold, typical March weather in Ohio. I took a cab to the hospital at 5:30 a.m., checking in at the surgical center while most of the world was still asleep. The registration clerk asked if someone would be joining me, and I said no. Just me, trying to keep my voice steady. "Will someone be picking you up tomorrow?" she asked, scanning her computer screen. My son will stop by to help me get home, I said. Though even as I said it, I wasn't entirely sure it was true. The pre-surgery hours passed in a blur of medical forms, IV insertions, and consultations with the anesthesiologist. Dr. Rodriguez stopped by to review the procedure one more time, his manner confident and reassuring. "You are going to do beautifully, Debra," he said. "This surgery will give you your mobility back. In 6 months, you will feel 20 years younger." I wanted to believe him, wanted to focus on the future relief rather than the immediate abandonment I was facing. When they wheeled me into the operating room, I counted backward from 10 and let the anesthesia take me under, grateful for the temporary escape from consciousness. I woke up in recovery to the sound of beeping machines and hushed voices, my throat raw from the breathing tube, my hip throbbing with a deep, bone-deep ache that the pain medication only barely touched. A nurse named Patricia checked my vital signs and explained that the surgery had gone perfectly, no complications, and that I would be moved to a regular room within the hour. "Is your family here?" she asked, adjusting my blanket. "They will be here later," I said, not wanting to explain the cruise ship situation to a stranger. But later came and went. Evening visiting hours, then night shift, then the next morning, and still no Ryan. I told myself he was probably delayed, that flight schedules were unpredictable, that he would show up any minute with apologies and explanations. The nurses never asked again about family, but I caught them exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. The kind of sympathetic expressions medical professionals share when they encounter situations that break their hearts. Friday morning, Dr. Rodriguez came by for the discharge consultation, reviewed my incision site, and confirmed I was ready to go home. "Remember, no weight-bearing on that leg for 10 days. He reminded me. "Use the walker religiously, keep up with physical therapy, and call immediately if you notice any signs of infection or unusual swelling." I nodded along, taking notes, but my attention kept drifting to the door, still hoping Ryan would appear. When the discharge nurse wheeled me to the hospital entrance, I called Ryan's cell phone and got voicemail. I tried Paige's number with the same result. Finally, I called a medical transport service and paid $80 for a ride home, struggling to get from the van into my house with the walker, while the driver waited impatiently in my driveway. Once inside, the silence felt deafening. The house that had always been my sanctuary now felt enormous and intimidating. Every room separated by distances that seemed impossible to navigate with my limited mobility. I made it to the bedroom and collapsed on top of the covers, exhausted from the simple act of getting from the front door to my bed. That is when I decided to distract myself with my phone, scrolling through social media to avoid thinking about how completely alone I felt. I opened Instagram without thinking, just muscle memory. And that is when I saw it. Ryan's latest post from just 2 hours earlier. The photo showed him and Paige at the ship's breakfast buffet, both wearing matching tropical print shirts, Paige's arm draped around his shoulders as they posed with mimosas and fresh fruit. The caption read, "Paradise found. Starting our Bahamas adventure with the most beautiful wife in the world. Life is good when you are living your dreams." I stared at the image for what felt like an eternity, my thumb frozen on the screen. While I was being discharged from surgery alone, paying for my own ride home, struggling to navigate my house with a walker, they were toasting their vacation with champagne cocktails and planning snorkeling excursions. But what broke something inside me wasn't just the timing, it was the comments below the photo. Paige's sister had written, "So glad you decided to come early. These extra days are going to be perfect for wedding planning." Ryan had replied, "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Some things are more important than anything else. Some things are more important than anything else." Those words hit me like a physical blow because I knew exactly what anything else referred to. I was anything else. My surgery, my recovery, my need for help. All of it fell into the category of things less important than vacation days and wedding festivities. I scrolled through more photos from their trip. Paige lying by the pool with a frozen drink, Ryan snorkeling in crystal clear water. The two of them dressed up for a fancy dinner, looking relaxed and happy and utterly without guilt or worry. Not a single mention of their mother recovering from surgery alone. Not one caption about missing family or feeling conflicted about being away. That is when I noticed something else in the photos. Paige was wearing a necklace I would given her for Christmas, an expensive gold pendant that had cost me nearly $500. In another photo, Ryan was sporting a new watch that looked suspiciously like the one I would seen him admiring at the department store when we went shopping together last month. These weren't people struggling financially, pinching pennies to afford a family wedding. These were people who had convinced me they couldn't afford to hire home care while simultaneously funding an extended luxury vacation. I set the phone down and lay there in the dim bedroom light, feeling something shift inside me like tectonic plates moving deep underground. It wasn't just anger, though anger was certainly part of it. It was a fundamental realignment of how I understood our relationship. A sudden clarity about patterns I would been too willfully blind to see clearly. For years, I would been operating under the assumption that our family worked on reciprocal principles. I helped them because they would help me when the time came. But now I could see the actual structure. I helped them. And they accepted that help as their due. And when I needed help in return, they found reasons why it was inconvenient or impossible or someone else's responsibility. I would been a bank, not a mother, a resource to be managed, not a person to be loved. The home health aide arrived Saturday morning as promised. A kind woman named Rosa who helped me shower, prepared simple meals, and monitored my medication schedule. She was professional and caring, but having a stranger provide intimate care while my own son posted vacation photos felt like salt in a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. "Your family will be back soon?" Rosa asked, as she helped me get settled in the living room recliner. "They are at a wedding," I said, which was technically true. "Ah, family weddings," she said knowingly. Always complicated timing. I didn't correct her assumption that the wedding was a brief, local affair rather than an extended Caribbean vacation. I was too tired to explain, too humiliated to admit that a tropical resort had taken priority over my surgical recovery. By Sunday, I was checking Ryan's social media obsessively, like picking at a scab I couldn't leave alone. More photos appeared throughout the day. Beach volleyball, sunset dinners, group shots with the wedding party. Paige had posted a video of herself and Ryan dancing at the rehearsal dinner, both of them laughing and spinning under string lights, looking like they didn't have a care in the world. The comments on their posts were effusive with praise and envy. "You guys look so happy, living your best lives, relationship goals." Not one person asked about Ryan's mother or mentioned anything about family responsibilities back home. Either they didn't know about my surgery, or they would been told some version of events that made their absence seem reasonable and justified. Monday morning brought a text from Ryan. "How are you feeling, Mom? Recovery going?" "Okay, we will call tonight after the wedding." I stared at that message for 20 minutes before responding. Recovering, enjoy the wedding. But they didn't call Monday night, or Tuesday, or Wednesday. Rosa continued her daily visits, and I continued the slow, painful process of learning to navigate my house with a walker, managing pain medication schedules, and attending physical therapy appointments via medical transport. Each day brought small improvements in mobility and strength, but also a deepening sense of isolation and betrayal that no physical therapy could address. Thursday evening, a week after my surgery, Ryan finally called. I was in the kitchen, trying to prepare a simple dinner, when the phone rang, and I genuinely considered not answering. But decades of trained responsiveness to my son's needs won out. And I picked up on the fourth ring. "Mom, how are you doing?" His voice was bright and energetic. The sound of someone who had spent a week relaxing in paradise. "Sorry we haven't called sooner. The resort Wi-Fi has been terrible, and we have been so busy with wedding activities." "I am managing," I said, gripping the walker handle as I stood by the stove. "That is great. I knew you would be fine. You are so tough, nothing keeps you down for long." There was a pause, filled with background noise that sounded like restaurant chatter and clinking glasses. "Listen, we are actually going to extend the trip by a few more days. Paige's family wants to do some island hopping, and the flight change fees are cheaper than we expected. Plus, the boys are having such a great time with Jen's parents." I closed my eyes, felt something cold and final settle in my chest. When will you be home? Probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. But by then you will be practically back to normal. Right? How is the aid working out? Rosa is very professional, I said carefully. Perfect. See, I told you it would all work out. Sometimes these things end up being better than the original plan anyway. He sounded genuinely pleased with himself, as if he would solved a problem rather than created one. We will come by as soon as we get back and hear all about your recovery. Love you, Mom? He hung up before I could respond, leaving me standing in my kitchen with the phone in my hand and the unmistakable sound of celebration continuing in the background, even after the call ended. That night, I sat at my computer and did something I would never done before. I looked up the cost of the resort where they were staying. The website showed luxury suites starting at $400 per night, spa packages, premium dining options, and excursion packages ranging from hundreds to thousands of dollars. This wasn't a budget family wedding trip funded by scraped-together savings. This was an expensive vacation that cost more in a week than my entire home healthcare budget. I calculated rough numbers based on their social media posts and my knowledge of their usual spending habits. Between flights, accommodation, meals, activities, and shopping, they were probably spending close to $5,000 on this extended vacation. The same amount would have covered professional home care for my entire recovery period, with money left over. The math made their choice crystal clear. It wasn't that they couldn't afford to help me. It was that they prioritized their comfort and pleasure over my medical needs. They would rather spend money on snorkeling trips and spa treatments than ensure their mother wasn't recovering from surgery alone. Friday morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called my lawyer. Eleanor Patterson had handled my will and estate planning for 15 years, ever since my divorce was finalized. She was a sharp woman in her 70s who had a reputation for being both compassionate and ruthlessly practical. When I explained that I wanted to review and potentially modify my estate documents, she didn't ask why, just scheduled an appointment for the following Monday. Bring all your current paperwork, she said. And Debra, if this is about what I think it is about, you should know that family dynamics and financial planning intersect in ways that can be very powerful when handled correctly. I spent the weekend thinking about that phrase, very powerful when handled correctly. I would spend so many years giving my power away, piece by piece, check by check, favor by favor, that I would forgotten I actually possessed any. But Eleanor was right. The house Ryan and Paige lived in, the one I would co-signed for and helped with the down payment, that mortgage had my name on it. The emergency fund I would established for family needs, that account was in my name only. The will that left everything to Ryan, that document could be changed. Monday morning, I took a medical transport to Eleanor's office. My walker folded in the trunk and spread my financial documents across her conference table like battle plans. Eleanor reviewed everything with the methodical precision of someone who had seen family betrayal play out in legal documents countless times before. Let me make sure I understand the situation, she said. Her reading glasses perched on her nose as she studied my mortgage co-signature paperwork. You guaranteed their house loan, contributed to their down payment, and continue to provide regular financial support. In exchange for this ongoing assistance, you expected reciprocal care during your medical recovery. Instead, they chose an extended vacation, leaving you to manage major surgery aftermath alone. That is correct, I said, and you are feeling that this imbalance needs to be addressed. I am feeling that I have been an ATM instead of a mother, and I am tired of it. Eleanor smiled, the expression both warm and predatory. Debra, you have more options than you realize. Let's start with the immediate situation and work toward long-term protection of your interests. Over the next 2 hours, Eleanor outlined a strategy that was both elegant and devastating. The mortgage co-signature gave me certain legal rights that Ryan and Paige had probably never considered. The regular financial transfers I would been making could be stopped immediately without legal consequence, since they weren't contractual obligations. Most importantly, my will and beneficiary designations could be modified to reflect my actual relationships rather than my hopeful expectations. The house is the key pressure point, Eleanor explained. If you remove yourself as co-signer and demand immediate payment of your down payment contribution, they will have 30 days to either refinance in their own names or face foreclosure proceedings. Given their current debt-to-income ratio and credit history, qualifying for a new loan without your guarantee will be extremely difficult. What if they cannot refinance? I asked. Then, they will need to sell and find housing they can actually afford on their own income, Eleanor said pragmatically. Which is what should have happened originally, before they convinced you to guarantee a loan for a house beyond their means. And legally, I am entitled to do this. Debra, you are entitled to protect your financial interests, especially when the other parties have demonstrated they don't consider your well-being a priority. Nothing about this is vindictive or inappropriate. It is simply aligning your financial commitments with the actual relationship dynamics. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. Eleanor would handle the legal notifications and document filings. The mortgage company would be informed of my intent to withdraw as co-signer. Ryan and Paige would receive official notice of my down payment loan recall. The monthly financial transfers would cease immediately. One more thing, Eleanor said as I prepared to leave. Change your emergency contact information everywhere: medical, financial, insurance. If they are not available for actual emergencies, they shouldn't be listed as emergency contacts. That evening, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years: the sensation of taking up space in my own life. For so long, I would made myself smaller, quieter, less demanding, so that Ryan and Paige could be comfortable taking from me without feeling guilty. But their choice to prioritize a luxury vacation over my surgical recovery had finally shown me the true nature of our relationship. They saw me as a convenience, not a person. A resource, not a mother. And I was done being convenient. Tuesday morning, Ryan called while I was at physical therapy. I saw his name on my phone and let it go to voicemail. When I listened to the message later, his tone was completely different from the bright, vacation, cheerful voice I would heard the week before. Mom, I just got a really weird call from some lawyer about the house mortgage. There must be some kind of mistake, because she was talking about you withdrawing as co-signer and demanding immediate payment of some loan. Can you call me back as soon as you get this? This sounds like identity theft or some kind of scam. Identity theft, as if the idea of me taking independent legal action was so foreign that criminal activity was a more likely explanation than maternal autonomy. I didn't call him back. Wednesday brought a series of increasingly frantic messages, first from Ryan, then from Paige, then from Ryan again. The tone progressed from confused to concerned to angry to panicked. By the fourth voicemail, Paige was crying, explaining that they would try to contact the mortgage company and learn that yes, I had indeed initiated withdrawal proceedings, and yes, they would need to qualify for a new loan independently or face foreclosure. We don't understand what is happening. Paige sobbed into my voicemail. We just got back from the wedding, and everything's falling apart. Please call us back. Please, we need to talk about this. But there was nothing to talk about. They would made their choice on that cruise ship, posting happy photos while I struggled through surgery recovery alone. Now I was making mine. Thursday afternoon, they showed up at my house. I heard the car in the driveway and watched from the living room window as they got out. Ryan grim-faced and determined, Paige red-eyed and clutching tissues. They knocked on the front door with an urgency that bordered on desperation, and I took my time getting there with the walker, letting them stand on my porch and think about how it felt to need something from someone who might not provide it. When I opened the door, Ryan started talking immediately, words tumbling over each other in his rush to regain control of the situation. Mom, what is going on? We just spent 2 days trying to figure out this mortgage situation, and the lawyer will not tell us anything except that you have initiated some kind of loan recall. This is crazy. We just got back from Paige's sister's wedding, and now our house is in jeopardy. We need you to call them and explain that this is all a misunderstanding. I looked at him. Really looked at him. and saw a man who would spend his adult life expecting his mother to solve his problems while contributing nothing to hers. Paige stood behind him, shifting nervously from foot to foot, her vacation tan already fading but her designer handbag prominently displayed. The same handbag I would seen in several cruise photos, probably another expensive purchase from their luxury vacation. "There is no misunderstanding," I said calmly. "I have decided to withdraw my financial support and protect my assets. You will need to qualify for your mortgage independently." Ryan's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally anger. "You cannot just do that. We have a family. We have kids. You cannot destroy our lives because you are mad about the wedding trip." "I cannot destroy your lives," I agreed. "I can only stop subsidizing them." Paige finally spoke up, her voice shaky with tears. "Debra, please. This isn't about the wedding. We wanted to be there for your surgery, but the timing was impossible. Paige's entire family was expecting us, and the deposits were non-refundable. And Ryan's work situation has been so stressful lately that he really needed this break." "The aid service worked out perfectly," Ryan added quickly. "You said yourself that Rosa was professional and helpful. You probably got better care than we could have provided anyway." I leaned against my walker and studied their faces, seeing clearly, for the first time, how they would rationalize their choice. In their version of events, they were the victims of impossible circumstances, forced to choose between competing obligations. My surgery had been just one item on a list of inconvenient timing. Not a moment when their mother needed them most. Rosa was excellent, I agreed, and expensive. About $200 per Dalton Y for the level of care I needed. "Well, you could afford it," Paige said, immediately realizing her mistake as the words left her mouth. "I could afford it," I said slowly. "Just like you could afford a luxury cruise vacation while your mother recovered from surgery alone." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Ryan opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. Paige looked at her hands, tears dripping onto her designer shoes. "What do you want from us?" Ryan finally asked, his voice smaller than before. "I want you to take responsibility for your own lives," I said. "I want you to live within your means without depending on my financial support. I want you to make choices based on what you can actually afford, rather than what you can convince me to fund." "But the house," Paige whispered. "The house you chose was beyond your budget from the beginning," I said. "You convinced me to co-sign because you wanted something you couldn't afford on your own income. Now you can either find a way to afford it independently, or you can choose housing that matches your actual financial situation." "This is about punishment," Ryan said, anger creeping back into his voice. "You are punishing us for going to the wedding." "No," I said, and I meant it. "This is about alignment. Aligning my financial commitments with the actual relationship we have, rather than the relationship I hoped we had." They left that day without resolution, without promises to fix things, without apologies for the cruise vacation that had started this entire reassessment. Ryan's final words before getting in the car were, "I hope you are happy with yourself," delivered with the same tone he would used as a teenager when I wouldn't let him skip school or stay out past curfew. I watched them drive away and realized I was happy with myself, for the first time in a very long time. Over the next few weeks, I heard through neighborhood gossip that Ryan and Paige had put their house on the market. My friend Donna mentioned seeing a for sale sign go up, and later that movers had been loading boxes. I didn't reach out to ask about their plans, didn't offer assistance with finding a new place, didn't provide a temporary financial bridge while they figured things out. For 40 years, I would been the family emergency fund, the backup plan, the reliable safety net that let everyone else take risks without facing consequences. Now they were learning what it felt like to live without that net, to make decisions based on their actual resources rather than their access to mine. The physical therapy was progressing well, my hip healing stronger than expected. Dr. Rodriguez was pleased with my range of motion and pain levels, and by 6 weeks post-surgery, I was walking with just a cane for balance. But the emotional healing took longer, required more intentional work. I started seeing a counselor, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in family dynamics and boundary setting. She helped me understand that my pattern of overgiving hadn't actually been generosity. It had been a way of trying to earn love and security by making myself indispensable. The problem was that people who loved me for what I could provide would always prioritize their needs over mine when push came to shove. Healthy relationships require reciprocity, Dr. Chen explained during one of our sessions. Not perfect balance, but genuine consideration for each other's well-being. When you removed yourself from the equation during your most vulnerable time, Ryan and Paige revealed that they hadn't actually been considering your well-being at all. So what do I do now? I asked. How do I rebuild a relationship with my son? You don't rebuild it, she said gently. You build a new one, based on honesty about who you actually are to each other, rather than who you hoped you might be. 2 months after the mortgage crisis, Ryan called, not to apologize, not to explain, but to inform me they would found a smaller house in a less expensive neighborhood and would be moving the following month. His tone was carefully neutral, like we were business associates rather than family. The boys are having a hard time with the change, he said. They don't understand why we had to leave their friends and school district. Moving is difficult for children, I agreed, not offering to fix the problem or ease the transition. Paige has been pretty stressed about the whole situation. She has had to go back to work full-time to help with the new mortgage payments. Full-time work can be an adjustment, I said, still not taking the bait. There was a long pause, and I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, waiting for me to offer help, to solve the problem, to restore the old dynamic where his struggles became my responsibility to address. Finally, he said, are things ever going to go back to normal between us? No, I said, and it felt like the most honest thing I would said to him in years. But that doesn't mean we cannot have a relationship. It just means we need to figure out what kind of relationship is possible between us as we actually are. 6 months after my surgery, I invited Ryan and Paige to dinner. Not to reconcile, not to restore the old patterns, but to explore what a relationship might look like when built on truth rather than financial dependency and emotional obligation. They came, though Paige looked nervous and Ryan seemed cautious. I served a simple meal, nothing elaborate, nothing designed to impress or comfort beyond the basic hospitality of sharing food. We talked about safe topics at first, the boys' school year, Ryan's work projects, my recovery progress. But eventually, Ryan asked the question I would been waiting for. Do you hate us for the cruise? No, I said, and I meant it. I was hurt and angry for a while, but I don't hate you. I just finally understood something important about our relationship that I would been avoiding for years. What is that? Paige asked quietly. That you care about me as long as caring doesn't require sacrifice on your part. And I enabled that, by never requiring sacrifice, by always being the one who adjusted, who accommodated, who solved problems with my time and money and energy. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. That is not fair. We care about you. You care about the version of me that makes your life easier, I said. But when I needed you to make your life harder for my sake, you chose not to. And that is okay. It is honest. But it meant I needed to be honest too about what kind of relationship we actually have. So what happens now? Paige asked. Now we build something real, I said. If you want to, based on who we actually are to each other, not who we pretend to be or wish we were. It wasn't a perfect dinner. There were uncomfortable silences, awkward moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But it was honest in a way our interactions hadn't been in years. When they left, there were no dramatic declarations of love or promises to do better. Just a tentative agreement to try building something new. The boys started visiting me on Saturday afternoons, just for a few hours. Without their parents, we would bake cookies or work on craft projects, and they would tell me about school and friends and their new neighborhood. They never asked why Grandma and Mommy and Daddy didn't talk as much anymore, and I never tried to explain. Children adapt to new normal faster than adults, and our new normal included separate relationships instead of complicated triangular ones. Ryan and I spoke on the phone every few weeks, conversations that were pleasant but careful. like acquaintances who shared some history but weren't quite friends. Paige sent occasional text messages with photos of the boys or updates about family events. I responded politely, but didn't offer unsolicited advice or assistance. It wasn't the relationship I would dreamed of having with my son and daughter-in-law. But it was real in a way our previous dynamic had never been. There was no pretending, no hidden resentment, no unspoken expectations. We interacted when we genuinely wanted to, not out of obligation or financial entanglement. A year after my surgery, I took my first solo vacation in decades. A week in Savannah, Georgia, staying in a charming bed and breakfast, taking historic tours, eating at restaurants I chose, wandering through art galleries and antique shops without anyone else's preferences to consider. I posted photos on social media, not to make anyone jealous, but because I was genuinely happy and wanted to share that happiness. Ryan commented on one of the photos. "Looks like you are having a great time, Mom." Simple, supportive, without the complicated undertones that used to characterize our interactions. "I am," I replied. "Life is good when you are living authentically." And it was true. Life was good, not perfect, not without challenges, but good in a way that felt sustainable and honest. I would learn to take up space in my own life, to prioritize my well-being alongside everyone else's, to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. The house felt like home again, not just a staging area for other people's emergencies. My bank account grew steadily without the constant drain of subsidizing other people's lifestyle choices. Most importantly, I felt proud of myself in a way I hadn't since Ryan was young, proud of my strength, my independence, my willingness to choose dignity over convenience. Sometimes I missed the old illusions, the fantasy of being needed and appreciated in ways that turned out to be conditional and temporary. But I never missed the anxiety of wondering when the next financial emergency would arise. Never missed the resentment of being taken for granted. Never missed the loneliness of being surrounded by people who only valued my utility. Now, when people ask about my family, I tell them the truth, that we are learning to have honest relationships instead of convenient ones. It is harder work than maintaining pleasant illusions, but it is also more rewarding. At 64, I finally learned that being respected is better than being used, even when being used feels like being loved. And that is a lesson worth a hip replacement surgery to learn. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have continued supporting family members who abandoned you during a medical crisis? Or would you have drawn the line like I did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your perspectives on family dynamics and boundary setting. And if this story resonated with you, check out my other videos about family relationships and finding your own strength. You might be surprised by what you discover about your own situation.